This is The Basketball Show with Shane the Hammer Heel. What they gonna say next?
Hello and welcome to The Basketball Show. My name's Shane Heel and we're brought to you by TCL Mobile, 2K and Bet with Joel. It's lonely in the studio again because JoJo, she's just gallivanting around the world at the moment. She's between Dublin and Dubai. Can you believe that? So to take her place, we've got the pocket rocket yet again, Derek Rucker. Are you still the pocket rocket? You reckon you can move around?
No, not at all. Not at all, Hammer.
Huge week of basketball to get through, mate. So let's get straight into it with the starting five brought to you by TCL Mobile. All right, D, let's get to the NBA. One of the greatest coaches of all time, if not the greatest, Gregg Popovich, got himself another record.
He did all-time winningest coach now, and he wins his games at a 66% clip, Shane. He went past Don Nelson, who was a winning coach, but wasn't really respected as highly as Gregg Popovich. You spent some time with San Antonio under Pop. How did you enjoy it? What did you learn?
I spent 5 minutes with him. He cut me in twice in, I think, about 8 or 10 weeks. But no, he's a champion. I mean, the biggest thing I learnt was that he set a culture and it didn't matter who it was. He coached every player to that level. And no matter who it was, I remember sitting next to Tim Duncan in a video session and him absolutely giving him a spray. And I felt very, very insecure at that stage. But congrats to Pop, superstar, and plenty more wins to go for him. All right, D, well, speaking of the Spurs, what about Jock Landale? 26 points. Now, we've got to give some advice to the greatest coach of all time. Wake up to yourself, Pop. He needs more time.
Pop knows what he's doing. Trust me. Look, Landale's a great example of all young players just staying ready. You've got to do the extra work, especially when you're not getting game time. Run the stairs like you saw James Harden doing to get yourself right. And Landale's a great example of a guy who's just got a tremendous attitude, and you see the results, 26 points and helping the Spurs. Look, they're having a tough season, Shane, so I don't see why Pop wouldn't give him minutes.
Oh, so now you're agreeing he needs to play more minutes. But and you're right, junior players playing in the NBL, WNBL, whatever, if you're not playing, he has a great attitude of being able to stay ready, and it's a lot tougher to do than what it is to say. So well done to Jock Landale. What about the Jack Jumpers? This is an unbelievable story that I don't think has been blown up enough. Scott Roth is Coach of the Year, and the Jack Jumpers, they play with so much ticker.
Yo, and they're so cohesive and united. You know, when they played up here in Brisbane, I spent a lot of time in their huddles. And, man, he had all eyes locked in on what he wanted. They're very familiar with one another. And Shane, it looks like they really enjoy it. And they are not, I wouldn't even have them in the top 7 in terms of talent in the NBL. But, look, they're sitting in a really good position with a real good chance to still make the finals. If they get hot here, Shane, they're going to be in.
Well, I think they're last as far as talent. But what they do is they know their roles. They play together. They play hard on defense every time. They've got a strategy of how they're going to be able to bring teams back down. And they did that against the Hawks. What were your thoughts of the Hawks at a critical time trying to make the top 4 that they poke themselves in the eye down in Tassie yesterday?
Yeah, that wasn't good. And they decided to play with about 5 minutes left in the game. You know, they're down 16, 17 points. Midway through that fourth quarter, Steindl's got the strut on. Things are looking great, and then Illawarra wake up. But, you know, that's kind of their season in a nutshell. Just too streaky, Shane. That said it all along.
Yeah, struggle for them right now. And, well, when we talk about woes, what about the Adelaide 36ers? It's been a woeful season with the amount of talent that they've had, and it didn't look like the fans turned up to support them yesterday or the day before.
Didn't turn up. It was a mausoleum in there. I've never seen that stadium look like that. And it was really sad. But, you know, the team's got to find a way to lift. And look, they've been beset by injuries. All types of things have happened this season. They've had front office changes. It's just not looking good, and something needs to happen. You know, they weren't able to lure Casper Ware out of Russia due to moral belief. So, you know, it is what it is down there.
What do they need to do next year? They got to turn this thing around. It's too big a club and history to be having this sort of season again.
They need a dynamic guard. Mitch McCarron's a fine player, but he's a utility type player. He needs good players around him. I think this first season for him, where he's really got a shoulder load, Shane, has proven to be just a little bit too much.
Good stuff, mate. That's the starting five brought to you by TCL Mobile. My favourite part of the show is crystal gazing when I get to be able to tell everyone about the leaderboard, because I'm on top, D. I'm on top.
Yeah.
And Director Dave and Joe, they're second. And then we have you on 58.3 behind the leader. And then Matty, he's that far back, he's stopped putting in his tips. All right, so I won't even read out his score. Let's get to the biggest game of the round that potentially is going to impact the Final Four. It's the Hawks hosting Phoenix, both coming off a loss.
I've got the Hawks. I think they'll hold up in this one. They've got a big weekend. You don't agree, obviously, but I like to hear your reasons.
Well, I just don't think that they fell in. Did they fall in? No, they just lost last time at home when I was courtside. And I think Southeast Melbourne had like 3 or 4 players out. They didn't have their coach. They're a much better team right now, whilst the Hawks are still trying to find solutions. And for 3 quarters, I thought Southeast Melbourne were terrific against Melbourne United. Went down. They'll learn a lot from that. I don't even think this game will be close. Southeast Melbourne in a trot. All right, second one. Adelaide versus Cairns. Adelaide at home. Can they bounce back?
Wow. The misery loves company game of the week. Let's give this one to Adelaide. Let's give it to Adelaide, Hammer. They still have some talent, but wow, the wheels are falling off, as we mentioned. Cairns are feisty, but down there they won't have a chance. Adelaide's win by an easy 15.
Yeah, I agree. I think they get that one done. Tasmania host the Hawks. And can they do it again? Unbelievably impressive. The Hawks are going to have to find some solutions at the offensive end because they were woeful.
So this is where things don't go well for the Hawks again. They're going to go down to Tassie, and Tassie are just going to get hot. They have confidence, man, against the Hawks. You know how, Shane, you played certain teams in the competition, and you just knew you were going to go off, I think that's the Hawks against Tassie. And, you know, Tassie need this game. They're hungry. They're inspired by the coach. They look united. I'm all over them.
I'm looking forward to seeing Gorge play his bigs together. I thought he went and played small ball because that's what Tassie did. I think he gets some advantages by playing one of their bigs in the 4 spot and seeing whether they can get some easy points inside as well. Phoenix host the Sydney Kings.
Oh, man. I love what Sydney's doing. I love the way Jalen Adams controls the game. He distributes, he scores. He's got a great feel for when he needs to impact the game. He's just so smooth, but they're not winning this game. They are not winning this game. Southeast Melbourne will need it too bad. It's a situational loss for the Kings. What do you think?
No, I think the Kings win this game. Southeast Melbourne can't defend. They gave up 100 points or something against Melbourne United, gave up 30-something points in crunch time in the last quarter after they had a big lead. They don't know who's going to shoot the ball. I think the Kings are going to be able to run it down their throat, but a great game. That one's going to be a ripper. Melbourne hosts the Adelaide 36ers in the bloodbath game of the week.
Yeah, this is a great game to build your confidence as you go late into the season. You kind of get a week to not really be crazy intense, but just know that, you know, talent will prevail eventually. And it's a good chance for Melbourne United to see if they can get some consistency now to Chris Golding. They waited till late in the last round against Phoenix to get him going, and look what difference it made when they got him going.
Brisbane host Cairns?
Brisbane. Cairns, this will be the second game on a road trip, and I can't really see them stepping up. I think guys will start thinking about their off-season plans, staying healthy for NBL 1, getting back to America and different locales around the world. Brisbane will have this one easy.
Perth host New Zealand in what will be the biggest margin of the round.
You think. New Zealand look good. They've got their bodies back. Yanni Wetzel, may be the most dominant guy in the paint outside of JLA. He's strong. He can back you down. I don't think this will be as easy as you think, Shane.
13,000 people, the Red Army, they will be up and firing. Hasn't been a game there for a while, so that's going to be a good one for Perth. I think it will be easy, but we'll check out the leaderboard next week. All right, time for In-Depth, brought to you by 2K, and we're very lucky to be able to have the big fella, one of Australia's greatest ever players, playing in the NBL with championships, the NBA, a trailblazer in the NBA, and then some success in Europe that's not talked about often enough. Please welcome Chris Anstey.
Thanks for having me, Hammer. Let's talk about it some more.
Yes, let's talk about ourselves. Hey, mate, so much to talk about, and we love your opinion. You go hard. So the first one, who's going to win the championship this year? It's so close.
You know what? I still think United, and I think Sydney are making a real run. I got to watch United play the Phoenix last night, and they fell behind, but they always somehow seemed like they had another run in them, and they've got the ability to add another import. I think they're going to do that, which will just add even more depth to that roster. And look, they're probably best equipped out of any team in the NBL to overcome injuries, which can happen around playoff time. And look, they're top-end talent. You know, Chris Goulding was quiet for 3.5 quarters last night, then just put the team on his shoulders the last 5 minutes, and he's capable of doing that. Matthew Dellavedova, he's adjusted his game as we knew he would as the season's gone on. For me, United remain favourite. I'm really, really interested to see what Sydney do.
And those teams, Chris, are obviously at the top of the ladder, very talented. They win a lot of games. Let's talk about the underachievers of the NBL, something you never experienced as a player. Who do you think have been disappointing in this NBL season?
You know what? There have been a lot of excuses for the New Zealand Breakers, and I understand that. But the times of what they just haven't turned up and played sometimes. And, I'm wondering when the spotlight gets shone on Dan Shamir. He's been in the league a few years now. He's had time to adjust, time to put a roster together. It hasn't worked. His style of play doesn't seem to suit the league. And the thing that I guess gets me, and we saw Rob Beveridge, who's out of a job, and we've seen Joey Wright, who's out of a job, but Rob Beveridge took over the Boomers, and you could see the engagement with that young group that he took across and got 3 wins. So I just think we have some extraordinarily talented local coaches, both here in Australia and in New Zealand, that if the Breakers don't find a way to turn up and compete every single night, then there've got to be some questions asked. But the other one for me is Adelaide. And again, they've had some excuses with injuries, but look, Mitch McCarron was replaced by Matthew Dellavedova. He went over to Adelaide on big money, and he needs to do more than a 7-5-7 guy. I would love, and he's got the ability to. I'd love to see him become a lot more aggressive on the offensive end, shoulder a lot more of the scoring load, and look to get up 15, 16, 17 shots a game, because they need that from him. And I think that will open up his ability to facilitate because he is a very unselfish player. But the flip side of that is their bigs, as much as we speak about their scoring, they don't defend. Adelaide give up a lot of points, a lot of nights. Daniel Johnson and Cam Bairstow aren't fantastic defenders, and at times go missing. So for me, they really need to find a way to fix that. They have the talent and the ability to be better than what they are. So probably New Zealand and Adelaide for me. But again, if we focus back on the positive, it's nice to be back in town. I got to go to a game with 10,000 people in it, and Melbourne United, they're going to make a run. Well, they're not going to make a run. They're making a run. They're going to be tough to beat.
You've just come back from the States, gone to see your daughter playing at UCLA. How's she going?
She's loving it. She's where she's meant to be. And, we've all had experiences, Hammer, as I know you know, where some things are promised, and oftentimes it's something completely different that's delivered. But what I'll say, and maybe it's the greatest compliment I can give the UCLA women's basketball program, is that they've delivered absolutely everything that they promised in the visits. She's got great people around her. She enjoys being there. It's a beautiful campus. They were the first team out of the NCAA tournament this year. They had a lot of injuries. They're actually the COVID replacement team, so they may still find their way in. But, she sat in a room through COVID and didn't get there for her entire freshman year, and it was a really, really difficult year for her. So just to get over there, see her play in person, see her smiling, She's going back again next year, so she's in a good place.
Wow, that's terrific. A proud dad, Hammer. You see that?
I see that. Don't worry about that. Awesome stuff.
Touching back here, though, you're a big guy. You had a great career. You know this type of style of play better than Shane and I do. Let's talk about Jo Lual-Acuil, JLA as he's known. What do you see from him? What are his NBA prospects? And I thought he struggled yesterday against Big Chief from Southeast Melbourne.
First and foremost, I think he's hands down the most improved player in the league. He's 17-9 a game. Last year, he was 9-5. He's really shouldered a lot of offensive responsibility, certainly the United's best interior presence. But you're right. He did struggle against Joe Chi, and as I've observed him over the year, he's really bullied smaller, less athletic defenders. And we don't have a lot of genuine athletes who are 6'10", 6'11", and bigger in this league. And that's his next progression. I think he's got two really important steps to take on his path to becoming an NBA player, which I think he can become. He needs to be able to compete against that length and strength better. Joe Chi bothered his shot, clean blocks a couple of times on his release. So he needs to understand how to create a little bit more space, maybe a little bit even more willing to shoot that uncontested three that he turned down a couple of times against the Phoenix. But the second part, with the ability he has, and I would imagine we're going to see it when we hit the finals, is he's going to get double teamed in the low block a lot. And he's a below average passer at the moment. And he can actually spend time developing that skill, hitting diagonal shooters. I'd love to see him step up from just over 1 assist a game. I think the amount of defensive attention he generates, if he can step up and be a 3 to 4 assist a game guy, because he's going to play 30-something minutes, I think we'll see him in the NBA if he can take those steps. But the exciting thing is, there's been some conversation around him becoming the most valuable player in this league. I don't think he's there yet, but he's still got other steps to take, and that's really exciting for him.
Yeah, we saw one pass yesterday where he clearly just passed it straight to the opposition. It wasn't a difficult pass at all. So I agree with that. But one person that is dominating the NBL right now is Mitch Creek. We've known that he can do it off the dribble. I think he's a perfect position of playing 3-4. He's developed his three-point shot. He is so tough to be able to defend in the NBL this year.
We interviewed him a couple of months back, and when I started writing, he was one of the first guys I wrote about, because I still remember back in 2012 in one of the first games I coached the Melbourne Tigers. Mitch Creek was at the Adelaide 36ers, and being my first game, I didn't have the guts to just direct my players just to almost disrespect his jump shot and dare him to shoot it. And he was incredible. He got on the rim and they beat us. We played them a couple of weeks later, and I learnt that lesson really quickly. And back then, he was just a non-shooter. He couldn't do it. I've never seen somebody build a jump shot from something that was literally broken or didn't exist. And it's a credit to him that he's retained that level of athleticism. He's built a jump shot. It's someone that I think Ben Simmons should be speaking to, because they're very, very similar. If you come to think about it, they finish with both hands. They've both got their right hand floater. They're both that left hand, almost mechanical. Mitch has become a lot more fluid, but he's the best Australian player in the league. And, there were some off-court issues that probably precluded him from being a part or even being considered for Olympic selection in Tokyo. But what he's doing on court, and with all of that off-court stuff behind him, he has to be the first NBL Australian player considered for the Boomers moving forward.
What about Cooks?
With Xavier Cooks. Now, and look, I'll tell you what, Xavier Cooks for me, and we can always jump back to when we played, but I played with a guy named Stephen Hall, as I'm sure you both remember, and he was the glue guy for all of our teams. He did whatever we needed. Now, Xavier Cooks is almost a more athletic Stephen Hall to me. He'll defend, he can pass, he can score when necessary. He finds the right spots on offense. He can play a wing, I think, internationally he needs to, or he can play that undersized 4 spot. But he's an incredible second or third guy. And I think he's even more valuable when you put talent around him. And that's what the Kings have been able to do with the addition of their new import. So I think Xavier Cooks becomes even more valuable with the more talent you put around him. And as you imagine, you imagine putting him next to Josh Giddey and Paddy Mills and, Jock Landale. I think he'd find a really nice niche in that Boomer squad as well.
Well, speaking of Josh Giddey, we know you're close to King Waz, ex-teammate, the man himself. How good has Josh Giddey been so far in this NBA season?
You know what? I coached him for about a month at under 20s, and he didn't turn up for the first few sessions. He had Center of Excellence trips on, and Darryl McDonald happened to be at the training session, and he warmed up really, really lackadaisically. And I thought I might have to have a go at him. And then the very first competitive possession in the half court, he broke down a mid pick and roll on his left hand and threw a left hand hook pass to Zach Triplett in the corner, who hit the easiest, most uncontested three. And I looked at DMAC and I thought there's probably only a dozen players in the world who could throw a bullet pass like that off the dribble with their offhand. He's just special. I wasn't sure that he'd be able to handle the physicality of the NBA as quickly as what he has, but his IQ's off the charts. He reads the game so well. I think we all knew he'd be successful. I just don't think any of us truly thought it'd be this quick.
D, can you remember a guard being able to pass with their left hand like he does? It blows me away. I say to Shyla all the time, you got to look at what he can do, the vision that he's got with his size, but his left hand's unbelievable.
I mean, the height helps. Luka can do it a little bit, but not like Josh can. And Josh can hit all the angles. And, Steve Nash was very good, but Steve Nash was 6'2", 6'3". At 6'8", man, that opens up so many possibilities. And, even with his finishes, Chris, you talked about the lack of, whether you felt he was going to be able to handle the physical part of the NBA. But because he's so tall and he can bump off, he's learned how to use the angles, can finish with both hands. That's probably been the most surprising aspect for me as well.
And the last part of that, I think, is his willingness to take and to miss some shots. He's not a natural shooter. He's building his shot. And, he spent some time with Andrew Gaze before he went to the NBA through COVID, but he's willing to take those shots. And I think that's going to be the next step. I mean, it's not that long a bow to compare him to Luka Doncic if he develops that jump shot. I mean, Luka's perimeter game's incredible. But Josh Giddey's got all the tools Luka's got outside of that jump shot. And that's just so exciting for Australian basketball.
Well, something else that's exciting for Australian basketball is the fact that you're bringing him back to Australia, and there's going to be some events in Melbourne and Sydney, I think. How do we get tickets?
Yeah, you go to Eventbrite and you search Josh Giddey. But look, it's one of the things I really wanted to do through COVID. And, we all sat on Zoom and we all told stories, and we couldn't wait to get into a room together. So I wanted to do something about it. And basketball's got these incredible stories to tell that in Melbourne, we tend to only hear AFL stories. So we'd had a night organised with Josh before he got drafted, which got cancelled through COVID. And we're so grateful for Josh and for the people who look after him that he was still able to, after the NBA season he's had, come back to Australia and give us a couple of nights. So April 20 in Melbourne, April 21 in Sydney. They're going to sell out quick. We can't wait to put Wazza on stage for a few minutes and get his perspective as Josh's dad, but more importantly to get Josh up on stage and really dig deep into how we got there, what the NBA was like, and where he sees himself. But it's been a fantastic journey already, and love to share that with as many basketball fans as we can.
Well, I know I won't be missing that one. I'll be at the Sydney one for sure. Can't wait to hear all those NBA stories. And I think so many people are proud of him, and so many people that know his dad as well, because they're just a great family, Waz and Kim as well. So get out there. But to you, big fella, thanks for coming on. Appreciate your opinions, mate. They're strong opinions, but we agree with them. And lots to follow. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, boys.
See you, Chris.
All right, time for Points Made, brought to you by Bet with Joel. Do yourself a favour and get to his website because he's on fire. Derek Rucker, the NBA, I was all over the Heat pre-season, all over them. Love what they do, love the way they're coached, their culture, but we haven't really given them much love, and they are performing so well.
They are, and it's interesting because we spoke about Gregg Popovich breaking the all-time wins record for the NBA, but I don't think he is the best coach in the NBA. I think the best coach is Erik Spoelstra of the Miami Heat. He consistently has his teams ready to play, ready to compete, and ready to win, no matter who is in the lineup. This year, the Heat have gone through all types of injury changes. Even right now, when they're playing good basketball, Jimmy Butler's been out, and now he has a toe problem. Bam Adebayo missed a lot of time. Tyler Hero was out. But Spoelstra somehow is able to keep that team functioning at a high level. And he's done this for a long time now, Shane. He's one of the longest tenured coaches other than Gregg Popovich in the league. And you know what? No, you haven't paid attention to the Heat at all because you've been too worried about disparaging James Harden. You need to broaden your scope and pay attention to the more positive aspects of the NBA.
The thing that I love about the Heat is it's not just the way they're playing, but the way they recruit. I think their strategies of who they add, who they trade, how it fits into the bigger picture, and how they get players playing above what they've done at other clubs is great too.
Well, look who's running the show, Pat Riley. That guy only knows one thing, and that's success. He is a gold standard executive. He and Jerry West probably are the all-timers. If you want to throw Jerry Krause in there from the Bulls, you can do so also. But Pat Riley runs the show down there, and I think that was one of the problems that LeBron had. LeBron wanted more influence, and Pat Riley was like, no, sir, this is the way we do it. We do it the Riley way, and you see the benefits.
We could say the same thing about the Grizzlies as far as sort of going under the radar a little bit. What about Jo Moran? How long ago was it that he was injured, came back? His own fans were booing him, and now he's like dropping big numbers, probably one of the most exciting players in the entire competition.
Well, when you look at exciting players in the league, you got to have Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Ja Morant. I think those are the three most exciting guys, and Kyrie. When they have the ball in their hands, something great is going to happen. And the Grizzlies, Shane, when I saw this topic come through, I didn't even realize they were second in the West. That's a fantastic achievement, and I bet you can't name their coach.
No, you're right. I can picture his face, but can they win it? So why do we write them off? Like, how far can they go?
They can't win it. I'd say they're probably going to be somewhat disappointing this time around in the playoffs. You know how this happens. The team looks great in the regular season, but it's not to say that down the line they can't do something, but this year is not going to be their year.
All right, back to a topic closer to home. And this is what I love about Larry Kesselman taking over the NBL, is he can make changes to whatever the clubs and what they decide to do for the best thing that suits the NBL. And what I want to see next, we've spoken about trades, but I think they need the play-in game as well. Can you imagine a play-in game if it happened this year? Because clearly you can have Tassie in there, but clearly there's 5 teams that still have a chance to win the championship. What better year if we had it this year?
It would be. And, the standard for basketball around the world is that at least 55% of the teams make the playoffs. Well, in the NBL, only 40% of the teams make the competition. And we can talk about the commercial benefits from having play-in games and so forth. But I think this is purely on the competitive balance that's in the competition right now. It's hard to separate Southeast Melbourne, Tasmania, Illawarra. It's really difficult to separate these teams, especially in a COVID year when we've had all types of things go on with respect to the pandemic. So I would love it, Shane, this year. But can it really happen?
I think it can happen. I think it will happen. And the league, their head office, they're proactive. They're looking for things to be able to make the league better. And you don't have to go through all the things like it has in the past when it was run by Basketball Australia and everything else, where all these things they just go, yep, that's what we're going to do, and they make it happen. And who do you think right now, you have to say one team, who's going to make the top 4?
Woo! Okay, so we got Melbourne United, we've got Perth.
They're in.
And we've got
Sydney. They're in. Okay.
So then we're looking at Southeast Melbourne. We're looking at Illawarra.
Yeah.
We're looking at Tasmania.
I'm not counting Tasmania.
They're one game out. They're one game behind.
I understand that. Just like Sydney's equal with the other teams that we've already set in.
But Sydney's loaded with talent. They're getting in.
That's
I
my
understand,
point.
but they're getting in.
And that's why,
Okay.
same reason why the Jack Jumpers will just fall short, even though I've been pumping them up.
But what happens if they beat Illawarra this weekend? If they knock off Illawarra, they're right
Are
there
they your
on
team to go in?
Southeast Melbourne's tail.
Are you picking them to go in, or are you just arguing for the sake of arguing? You sound like my wife. What do you?
You know what? My heart wants Tassie to get in.
Oh, so does mine. But that's not what we're talking about. I want to know who's going to make it.
Southeast Melbourne.
Yeah, I agree. I think Southeast Melbourne's just, they've got better balance. They've got more talent. The Illawarra Hawks haven't got it right this year, even though they've arguably got, they've got the most winning coach in the history of the NBL. They just haven't got it right as far as the way they play together, the way they think, the way they play. There'll be big changes there next year.
I thought yesterday they had a chance to really make a move at the beginning of the fourth quarter, and they didn't bring that trademark Gorgian game-turning defense. They let Steiner go whack. Majette hits one. McVeigh hits one. And, that's 12 points right off in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the fourth quarter. You just don't see that from Gorgian's team. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's addressing that aspect of play, because, that's make or break time.
But they got pushed out offensively. I thought their offense was so bad. That was a bigger problem than their defense, that they just didn't have an understanding about where their mismatches were. I didn't know what they were trying to do. I couldn't tell. Normally you can see, okay, this is what they're trying to do. I couldn't see their strategy. And a lot of the times, no doubt Gorgian would have had one, but the players have to go out and be able to implement that. And they just didn't play with the right mindset for me.
Well, perhaps, Shane, it's time to get a true point guard out there. Would you look at Emmett Nahr based on what we saw him do at the Boomers level, Boomers light level?
The hardest thing is, as coaches, we've all got what we want, and for whatever reason, some players just don't fit in, and that's obviously the case for Emmett Nahr, because he can play in this league. And I think it's at the stage now where Gorge needs to make some sort of change, and giving him some sort of opportunity to be able to do it, I think would be positive for them, because he's not trying to score. He's just moving the ball. He's a great passer. Maybe he gets some easy points. He doesn't play the sort of defense that Gorgian-type point guards normally play. He's not that same size. But I think there's upside, and he needs to make a move right now. Well, that's it. You're just nodding, mate. Agree with me. So that's points made for another week. Check out Bet with Joel, and we'll see you next week, D. All right, big show. That's all we've got time for. Big thanks to TCL Mobile, 2K, and Bet with Joel. Fingers crossed we get JoJo back next week. We're going to have to twist her arm to get back to Australia, but we'll see you then.
This is a co-production by News Corp Australia and Closer Sports.